Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Speaking Legally, where the legal meets the cultural. We're so excited that you've joined us on another one of these wonderful summer days. We have to enjoy the heat while we can, because clearly we won't have it for long. We'll be in the fall months before you know it. But excited to be back again with our legal experts who are here to share insight, information, empower our community with knowing how to navigate and manage what it is that we need to be aware of, what affects us. You know, everything doesn't hit our community the same way as it hits others. So, this is where the legal meets the cultural. You have access to two experts who do this day in and day out, and we stay on top of what's happening in the world. So, before we get into our show, lots to talk about today. I'll let our co host greet us. Mr. Russell, over to you.
Hey, hello everybody. Welcome to another episode of Speaking Legally. Glad to have you here, and let us sprinkle a little bit of legal education and cultural, I guess, wherewithal today. As I pass it on to my partner Ed Pichardo.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Buenas tardes, comunidad, mi gente. How are you today? Welcome to our show today. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it and find it educational as well as fulfilling, as usual.
As usual,
So
that's
which
what.
so which one are we trademarking? Are we trademarking as usual or which one we using? I just want to make sure because I got to put the file.
Educational
I
as
got to
well
put
as
the file. I got to
fulfilling,
put the
and
file.
vice versa. We'll pay the
Oh,
extra fee.
All right. We want to make sure the paperwork is correct when it goes in. That's all.
we're starting early today, I see, gentlemen. Well, definitely quite a bit for us to discuss in the news. One that caught me off guard when it comes to what's happening in COVID. And let's just say, before we get into it, our thoughts and prayers are going out to everyone who is still dealing with COVID-19. People are still losing their lives. Vaccinations don't guarantee. Um, that you will survive. It guarantees allegedly that you will have less of a challenge in fighting through it and actually being able to come out successful. Let's use wisdom. We know how this is affecting our community. It's America is catching a cold and black people get pneumonia. Let's use our heads. The Delta variant is out here. So if you are enjoying the last summer days, you're moving about, wear a mask where there's too many people. Just be conscious of how you're taking care of yourself so that we can be able to be here with you on this show into eternity. Well, at least as long as we can be here. Hey, Patrick, thank you for joining and being here today. So it seems as if when you're out dining, which a lot of people are doing, there's some information that kind of slipped through the cracks. Some people might not have paid close attention. So I'm going to go to a video and see if you heard about this.
If you have plans to eat out this weekend, you could see a new fee on your bill. Starting today, restaurants and bars around the city can now impose a COVID-19 recovery charge of up to 10%. It's up to them if they choose to do so. Because Michael Herzenberg is getting some reaction to this new charge. He is on the Upper West Side for us this morning. Hey, Michael.
Hey, this won't be a surprise to you because it has to be printed on the menu and then on your bill how much the restaurant is actually choosing to charge if they choose to charge it. And this really is an effort to give restaurants another option, an option to help them sustain themselves in difficult times, or maybe pay for the personal protective equipment that is necessary. Here's how it works. You can be charged up to 10% of the bill. The surcharge is subject to sales tax. It is not a tip, and it may be imposed on indoor and outdoor dining only, not takeout or delivery or banquets, and it must be clearly disclosed on the menu and the bill. Jeremy Gladys, the manager of Good Enough to Eat, Brad's Barbecue and Harvest Kitchen, joins us. What do you think of this new option for you?
Hey, we appreciate that anything the city, state, and the general public is doing to try and help small businesses, restaurants stay in business. Every little bit helps. We're all in this together, and we really appreciate the help.
Are you going to impose this 10% fee?
It goes into effect today. It's going to be on our menus. It's already printed on our menus. We have to put them in the sleeves and get ready to go. Yeah, we will do 10% on all our restaurants. our restaurants are very inexpensive, so it won't be a big charge. It'll be a couple dollars per person, something to that nature at most. And we need it, as do all the restaurants and small businesses. We appreciate it.
Do you have any concerns that customers who are hurting themselves?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is good enough, probably.
Okay. All right, that gives you the idea of what this actually is, but I found that interesting. So 10%. What say you, are legal experts? And hey, Jerry, thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding is that it's up to 10%. So an eating establishment or a bar can decide to do 5%, or they can do 7%. I was actually, this was actually the product of a conversation I was having with Royce, just, on a consumer level. And, I told him, I said, listen, when I went out, shortly after things started to open back up slightly, I saw one of these on my tab. I didn't mind paying it simply because at the time I said to myself, well, these businesses have been suffering, so they deserve at least a little bit from a customer like myself, because certainly at that time, you were eating in places where you might be one of maybe four, or just one of the few people in there because of the social distancing requirements. And and you felt at the time, I felt that I certainly wanted to support the establishments. And so I went ahead and paid without asking any questions, and then did some research later and became aware that this was something that the New York City Council was allowing, I guess, to really help out small business. So if you see this on your tab, don't be surprised, and it's separate and apart from the gratuity slash tip.
I mean, one of the ways this came up again in reference to us having this conversation and that Ed and I talking about it was that obviously as small business owners, we can appreciate the fact. I mean, look, our law firms are not 50 plus law firms. We work like we're 50 plus people. We take on litigations like we're 50 plus people, but we're not mid-sized firms. So we'll fall in the category of small businesses with a very impactful and powerful punch. And so any way that we can support that, we're all for that. Doing a lot of work, and Ed practicing in the labor arena, employment arena, we're all for the employees and the employers of small businesses. So recognizing this as something that was going to happen and has happened wasn't a big deal. But on speaking legally, we have to bring the cultural to it, and we have to make our viewers aware that it does exist, right? No restaurant owner or waitress is coming to you and telling you this. They're not telling you, hey, we have this extra up to 10% covert surcharge that is on your bill. You have to read it. You have to look for it. You have to be aware of it. And so, although I'm on the right side of the ledger that it should be used, it is helpful, it's up to 10%. I'm also on the right side of the ledger as to informing our community and making sure our community understands that you may see it. Now, a lot of people I go out with, they are middle to upper class folks. They look at their bill. They look at it. That's how they got there. They look at every single cent on their bill. They look at every single charge. They look at every single penny. But there are those that's within the African Latino diaspora that may not even look at the bill. Just read what the bottom line is, add the gratuities on it, and send it on its merry way. And then they don't realize that until they empty in their pockets with their receipts, or they see their credit card bill and they're like, well, wait a minute, how did this charge get here? If they're that diligent. I'm not saying you have to be, but at least from this show, you are aware that it exists. And if I may go further, the reason why all of this came up is because, look, your host, your co-host in here, myself and Ed, we do a lot of reading on our spare time that's outside of legal documents. And so I was reading the business and finance section of the Wall Street Journal, and the Wall Street Journal did an article on how retailers, brick and mortar stores that you go and buy shorts, t-shirts, hats, whatever personal items, are also adding this fee. It's not a COVID fee. What it is what they call a retail adjustment fee. So if you use a credit card, there's an additional charge built in using the credit card outside of what the retailer gets from the credit card company. The retailer adds an additional charge to make up the gap for the dollars that they're losing because of COVID. Now, once again, for small businesses, every penny, every nickel counts. And so therefore, I understand it. But on the other hand, no one is telling you this, right? And the article speaks that there are some retailers that will let you know that if you use cash or if you use a debit card, you can get a discount.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Wall Street Journal is writing about this. You know, this has been going on for a minute. And you know that we ain't even realized that this has been going on. And I know we do a lot of online buying and a lot of, doing, Prime and this, that, and the other, and we Amazon and eBay. And I don't know truly how it affects going through those modes of purchasing as a consumer. But in a variety of stores that you go to, I think Macy's was cited as one. Let me just take a minute and just read what it says. It says, more small businesses and even some larger ones are charging shoppers a fee for credit card purchases or offering them a discount when they pay with a debit card, the cash or checks. The moves are meant to offset the various fees businesses pay on credit card transactions costs that have grown along generous cash back and travel rewards. And then it says data is shown during the COVID cycle, dollars are down in brick and mortar. And so they said the coronavirus accelerated the shift, sending businesses in search of revenue to make up for the sales lost in the pandemic in the early months. That's the paragraph that got me. So they're making up revenue off of your back. You're not getting any revenue because you may not be working or your hours might be limited. And you choose to spend your money in those establishments, small ones and large ones, and they're making it off your back. And so, long story, get Ed. I see you want to say something. You're on mute.
Oh, hold on 1 second. Let me make sure he's on. Okay, Ed.
There you go, Ed.
Okay. Did they mention whether some states, though, what states this is happening in? Because I thought that there were certain states that prohibited credit card surcharges and convenience fees.
Well, New York used to do that because of the percentage that was being charged, but they have slowly moved away from that. No, it does not go through a list of which states of the many states that we have in the United States. It does not go through that. But their research is on time, right? We know their research is somewhat relevant. They don't just, this is the business and finance. It's legit. Now it's up to us from Speaking Legally to give the information to our community and our community in whatever state they may be sitting and watching this show. Now they can say, let me check my bill. Wait a minute. They can ask the guy at Old Navy or whatever store they may be and say, do I get a discount if I use my debit card? I know there's one establishment, I can't remember the name of the store, but they said they charge you 5 cents if you want a bag. You don't want a bag, you can walk out with your receipt and your clothes in your own bag. These are ways that people, businesses are making up the lost revenue, and we need to be conscious of it. And that's all I'm bringing to the forefront. I mean, when I look at the New York Consumers Protection Law, it says forbid all deceptive or unconscionable trade practices in sales, lease, and rental loans. And then when you look at consumer rights, some of the things that they cite as far as consumer rights is the right to be heard, right to safety, right to redress, right to be educated, the right to be informed, and the right to choose. So I'm speaking about the education and being informed part when you're in that retail store. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't shy away from your own responsibilities, which is to be critically aware, to be involved and to be organized. But this is what is happening on a local level. And, you can always file a complaint with the Department of State or Department of Consumer Affairs if you think something is being done unjustly, but we need to be aware.
Absolutely. I mean, I know I didn't know this was happening. And, I check. I don't know if I've really had a bill that I needed to check recently, but this is newly instituted as far as the restaurants. But the stores, as to your point, they've been instituting different ways in which they can recoup. So, we understand why, but we still have consumers that are suffering. So it's interesting. Just interesting. And let's see how long this will last, because that's the other part. I didn't see anything here that said this was just temporary, or is this going to be just a new normal moving forward, getting us back on track?
Right. And so now you're talking about the Delta variant, right? And so how long does it go? You got Dr. with Fauci. He's talking about maybe things might go back to normal spring of 2022. So, and will there be noise, or will we know when, in fact, that this type of initiative is banned? How long do a restaurant can keep this on their books and not let you know? Now, what was interesting in the video is up to 10%. So most restaurant owners will probably use 10%, as the benchmark, or maybe they might use 5% as a benchmark, but they're going to use something. But the retailers, and what is interesting about the retailers is that you don't know. Like, your conversations with the cashier when you go to buy and
That's
use your credit card, right? And at that point, you swipe, you put your PIN number in or whatever, or you swipe and you go. You don't get a chance to look at the bill. You see the pants, it costs $10.99. You think a little taxes, you walk out $15, and you could keep on going. You don't think anything of it. And so we have to stop and think. We have to stop and realize, what's going on.
because these little charges add up at the end of the day. So it's just, it might be something that we have to be aware of for those who budget properly, that if you are going to go out, if you're going to do these things and you're going to use credit versus debit, if it looks like the restaurants, it doesn't matter whether you use credit or debit.
Right. It doesn't
You're
matter.
still going to get, yeah. So it's just, you're going to get charged that you add that, right? Because people who budget, which I hope our community is learning how to budget so that we can be responsible for the amount of coins you have, whether it's, a million, it's 500, or it's $20, to know how you're budgeting that out and anticipate that this surcharge will be there when you are, hanging out with friends, enjoying a quick bite. And yeah, thanks for that, bringing that up. I did not know. I'm like, oh, I'm getting ready to go out some point this weekend, so I'm going to look for that surcharge. And is this just in New York, or are we thinking
No,
that this is going to be across the board with the rest? Because I know New York is doing this, but have we heard that any other states are doing it as well?
well, I know New York in reference to the restaurants. As far as retailers, I mean, you're talking big retailers. So, they have stores in many states. Once again, to delineate whether or not, a Champion or Foot Locker in Oregon is using the same type of extra charge in reference to credit cards versus the Foot Locker in New York or New Jersey. I do not know, but it's out here. So it's happening. So you just need to ask those questions. Once again, as a consumer, you have to be responsible for, you have to be critically aware, you have to be involved and organized, and no Consumer Protection Act is going to get you away from that. But also, you have the right to be educated and the right to be informed. And so that's the part that I'm really hitting on for today, is that you have the right to be informed. I just want to mention something else that we talked about, unless you have something else you want to say on this subject.
And not on this subject. I was getting ready to talk about history being made.
Oh, but
Yeah,
just give me, if you let me go just a little further. One of the things
sure.
that we talked about on this show in the past is, and it's always going to be brought up, is the right for the worker, the employee, to sue the employer if they catch corona, COVID, or the right to not to have to be vaccinated. And as the legal world has turned on this subject matter, just thinking it through, we're now in a position, given the variant and looking at history, measles, mumps, and all those other vaccines for vaccinations that people had to go through as little kids to go to school. The way the litigation is shaping out is that you're probably not going to have a leg to stand on if you want to sue a private sector or a state state agency on the grounds that they're forcing you or they're mandating you to get a shot. They're not. You can't have it both
Wow.
ways. You can't say I'm not going to get a shot, but yet I want to be able to sue the workplace because it is not safe and or because I caught COVID. So it's going to be one or the other. And the way it's shaping up now is that the law is trending, although nothing is written in books, but just what people are kind of doing and speaking to in the employment area is don't come to my office with that. I mean, don't come to my office with that. You're not getting vaccinated. And I see Ricardo talked about, yes, there is an area to talk about reasonable accommodations, but what's reasonable to you may not be reasonable to me and may not be reasonable to the third party, but you're not going to be able to have your ice cream cake, cookies and everything. You're not going to be able to say, I'm not taking the shot. I need for you to reasonably accommodate me. And if something happens to me while I'm on the job and I get COVID, so now I'm going to go for workers' compensation, as you see here that Sabrina Farr brought it up, or I'm going to sue my employer. That is a real hill to climb up. And let me also say, if the public sector says that it's mandated for you to do it, and this is the way the trend is shaping, litigation can always change things, but this is the way the trend is shaping, that if you decide that you're not going to do that, and then the private employee fires you, don't expect to get unemployment because it's being treated as almost tantamount to misconduct. It's being treated as if the private sector has on their books that says you need to come in at 9:00.
Hello?
A company says
I can't hear.
You need to come in at 9:00, and you don't come in at 9:00. Well, then you're fired, right? You can't go and then get unemployment, right? So if on the books, if the private sector says that you have to do this in order to, and you decide not to do it, well, that's in my employee handbook.
Well, we talked about that on a previous show about knowing what's in your handbook, knowing what those rights are. That's a whole nother show of just really understanding what's going to happen. Because you mentioned this earlier, there are a lot of new issues that are arising. The cases are still in flux, like everything is happening in real time. So it'll be interesting to revisit this same conversation 6 months from now to see what has actually been litigated in court and what the decisions are regarding this. So thank you for letting us know about both issues. That's why you are a legal expert, both of you here. I know Senor Pichardo is just dealing with a little tech, but we're going to keep it rolling because we have some historic news to share. I know that we want to circle back and talk about what has happened with pardons, but I'm going to preempt that with the celebration for all women, right? It's something that we didn't plan, we didn't see this coming, but it happened. And now we have the first female governor of New York, which is a major. She's 62 years young, from Buffalo. So it's also the first time that someone upstate in a long time has been the governor of New York. And they had a small ceremony last night. And of course, we know this is because of the scandal that happened with the former Governor Cuomo. So this is something for young girls to look at. I'm talking about all of the exciting new opportunities for women in government and leadership, and this is yet another one. So we want to definitely say congratulations to Governor Hackl on her new position as governor of the greatest state. And we'll talk about who she has now chosen as her lieutenant governor. But before we get into that, let's just pause and give her a round of applause for being our new governor. So, as a woman, that was important for me to make sure we acknowledge that. And, I've had an opportunity to be in her presence a few times, looking forward to see what it is. Yes, Sabrina, major for women, and she chose a Black man for government lieutenant governor. Absolutely. We're going to talk about that and the historic nature of that as well. But There was
Is it
some pardons.
historic? Is it historic that this is the first time that the lieutenant governor is black? I don't know. Let me ask Ed. Ed, you're a historian. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I believe that is correct. Well, no. Wait a minute. So let me see. David Patterson
Was he
came into
Luke?
office
Oh, so
Right.
it's the second. It's still kind
after
of
after Spitzer had
So
to
he's the
resign,
so
and
he's
he
the second.
became the governor.
All right. So
he
he's the
became the
second.
governor. So he's the second that we know. Yes.
Yeah.
So Harlem is jumping up now. I mean, Harlem is taking,
Yeah.
between
We gotta blow some horns for Harlem. That's how Harlem gets down.
you got brother Alvin for district attorney, and then we got brother Benjamin, and then those Ivy League schools, those PWIs, man, are spinning around. They breakdancing. I better put my application in right now to get it going. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, yes. So we corrected. I'm just excited. I just saw Brian the other day. Who knew that this would happen? So thank you all for all of your commentary in the chat. So more to come from this. And Brian Benjamin also represents a lot when you talk about culturally at Harlem, Caribbean. There's so many pieces to it. So it's a new day in New York State. We will see what comes of it. We on this show continue to remind you to be engaged so that you can hold people accountable for the things that they are elected to do and work on the behalf of our community. So that is very important when we talk about how bills, offices, appointed positions, elected positions, all of this is a part of staying engaged and understanding exactly what's going on and not just going through life, but growing through with the people that we put in position to advocate on our behalf.
And this is a prime example. His success is a prime example of being able to walk and chew gum at the same time, right? Because he was on the ballot to become comptroller of New York, right? And maintain his Senate seat, and now put himself in his position that now he's lieutenant governor. I'm sure when he was running for comptroller, he had no way to even think. Like, that wasn't even in his brain at that point, right? It was all about that position, that time, and that moment. But your resume, your body of work, being in the right place at the right time, doing the right things right now, makes you the person that sits in that seat right there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, what's the moral to that story? Do the right thing. Stay connected with the right people because we don't do life alone. So, being in the right opportunities to serve and people know your value that you add, you never know where your name might enter a room. So, congratulations to both Governor Hackl and Lieutenant Governor Benjamin. Oh, my goodness. That sounded so much fun. So now let's go to the not so exciting, depending on how you look at it, because our former governor did have a chance to pardon some individuals as a result of him stepping down from office. So I'm curious to hear from our legal experts what the assessment is on those who have been pardoned.
Well, last week I took a look at some of the individuals that were pardoned or had their sentences commuted. It didn't look very controversial to me at the time, but I know that people are taking issue with at least one of the individuals who I believe his sentence was commuted. I believe he was involved in some sort of Brinks robbery back in the day, and I got a feeling that's not faring too well within the law enforcement community. So it's just very, very interesting. I mean, from what I recall in reading the reasons why, it looked like this individual had reached a certain level of redemption in terms of the time that has been spent in incarcerated and in making use of that time in a productive way. So for those who are advocates of forgiveness and taking a good look at the deeds that an individual has engaged in, after being convicted of a crime, for those individuals, that this isn't a big deal. But for others, who feel in this, who have very punitive mindsets, they may find this to be controversial.
Well, you know what? I'm halfway walking down your block, and then I'm halfway making a U-turn to go back down the other way, right? I think it does set an example for some of the things that you have said. But if our viewers can't see it, and if they can't, I will tell them this. When you look in the article that we just post, look at the third paragraph. Gilbert's son, San Francisco District Attorney. See, politics, you can't, they don't say Gilbert's son, owner of Harlem Masters on 125th Street. No, his son is a district attorney in San Francisco. He is the guy. Now, mutually exclusive. His father may have done the work that he's done in prison, but then you hear the other side that his son is the district attorney in another state. Now, let me just tell you, they have conferences for district attorneys. That's the head honcho law enforcement for the state, y'all. You hear what I'm saying? Right? New York happened to have a couple of them, right? Because the counties and the way it's broken up. Some people, some places, some states, that's it. It's just that guy. It ain't no, there's a little county guy who might be the sheriff or prosecutor, but that's the guy. And so on one hand, I take it for what it's worth. The guy rehabilitated himself. He did all the good deeds, and we want to put that out there for others to do the same. But then on the other hand, I wonder, as what rapper says, I wonder how it keeps from going under, right? There's a whole bunch of people. There's a whole bunch of people that have done a lot of good deeds and a lot of good works. That son is not the district attorney of San Francisco, and the governor of New York is not pardoned. I mean, like, how does this work? You put your hand in the cookie jar, you fold it up like in the old days. Ed got to kiss Sadie. If you get the right piece of paper, you fold it up. Royce got to kiss. Like, what's going on in here that makes it so? Because we didn't think about any of these people. There's no one that we thought of that's like, all right, that needs to be part. And this conversation is like, you know what? I'm getting ready to walk out the door. Let me just see what I can do, and maybe who can help me. Maybe.
So you seem to suspect that this may have a political angle to it, or that it was influenced by political association.
You heard that record? Nothing from nothing leaves nothing. You gotta have something if you want to be with me. Yeah, I'm telling you, Como singing. He know that record. That's around about his time.
No romance without some fine ass. What you trying to say?
Clearly.
I can't. I'm unable. Lord have mercy. Here we go.
I'm just saying that, as far as this show, speaking legally, we got to think about the cultural. We got to look with our third eye, and that's the critical thinking aspect. And people say, "Oh, what a coincidence!" Not so fast. I don't know if coincidence happening like that all the time.
Well, we could debate that. That's true. And to Senor Pichardo, you said it didn't seem like anybody else really raised that far an eyebrow.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, I mean, other than I think in the Post maybe, or one of those papers, they were like, oh, they don't like any, they're really against any of these sorts of commutations or pardons. Conservative leaning, commentators are just that way. But outside of that, the main issue, like I mentioned last week, was that I think that the big issue was people were looking at the possibility of him pardoning himself, but he didn't do that. So, and he left as he said he was going to do. The question is what's going to happen now in terms of this report and so forth, and him possibly being able to run again for office since he wasn't removed, or that the articles of impeachment weren't voted on and sent to the Senate.
Well, we can expect him to run, but it just be far in the future. Would he 63, right? Yeah. How old is the governor? Governor Cuomo's in the 60s, right?
I'm not sure.
I would imagine so. I mean, and
right? So you had 10 years onto that. You had 5 years onto that. Late 60s, early 70s. You could probably make a push, but we know he's going to go in the private sector because that's what they do. He ain't retiring, right? You would think he could retire, but he's going to the private sector.
Well, what's interesting? It's interesting you mentioned that because in the days leading up to, I guess he officially resigned, or he left the governor's office on Sunday night or whatever. You continue to hear throughout the media this recitation of all of his accomplishments, right? And
That's right.
it's interesting how that coincides right now with the trouble that President Biden is finding himself in with respect to, Afghanistan and his ratings right now. And I don't know. It's going to be really interesting how things play out here in terms of the American public and looking at him as a possibility for that office 4 years from now. Although I will say that I heard earlier today that now Governor Hackl dropped some sort of bomb in terms of disclosing that there were more COVID deaths than previously revealed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that goes both ways, right? I'm never a fan for when, like if I punch you and I knock you out, I'm not going to stomp you, right? I'm not going to do that, right?
Why not?
Look, let's speak culturally. We've seen that in our lifetime. We've seen that in our lifetime, right? A guy getting knocked out. Why would you stomp him? Why would you do anything more, right? And so, Hackl, be careful. Now you're talking about there's more COVID deaths because guess what? When you're running, which he will have to run, there's going to be somebody that's going to run against her. And that somebody that run against her is going to talk about her complicity. And so now you start pulling out numbers left and right, and you didn't speak up before. Watch yourself, hot peas and butter. You're getting warm. You're getting warm. You're getting hot.
I think what I think is I think that's a move in terms of her asserting her independence. Remember the platform from her end has been, listen, I wasn't in that report. I had nothing to do with this stuff. While he was doing that stuff in the mansion, I was running around in the state.
That's the report.
Fulfilling the duties of the lieutenant governor.
That is the report, right? Now we're talking about there's more.
No, but I'm saying even outside of the report, the understanding that she's projecting and that people are getting and seem to concur with is that she was isolated from the regular, work of the governor's office. She was relegated to lieutenant governor duties, and that now she wants to set a different standard in a different climate.
It is no doubt that position is advantageous to her. I didn't see it's like the three monkeys. One got the hand over the eyes, one got over the ears, one got over the mouth, right? What are you going to do? What you can't say I was right by his side, so you're going to say I wasn't. And it is until a guy like you or a guy like me is running for that position and say, wait a minute, let me dig a little deeper. You didn't look at any report. You just said, hey, look, you're going to lock me in the rubber room and close the door, and you were satisfied with that. You didn't try to get out through the window. You didn't try to do anything. You didn't do no SOS code. Who did you speak to say I was dissatisfied with how he was doing A, B, and C? That's more to come. We ain't going to resolve it right here. You and I will be talking about that in 4 years.
We'll see. But she is making a very clear attempt to be transparent. That's really where all of this is coming from, that she wants to make sure that she is transparent, that she's discussing everything. So we'll see where it all falls at the end of the day.
Don't get me wrong. I commend her for that. I mean, like what she's doing is right on. I'm with it 100%. That's what you should be doing. But I don't buy that, what was going on. They had me in Long Island somewhere, and everything was going on in Albany. I was at 1051 in the Bronx with the Get Down Brothers, and I didn't know what was going down. You know what I'm saying? And over here, that I'm not buying. That I'm not buying.
Oh my goodness. Well, there is more to discuss in the news, and we just hope for the sake of the safety of New Yorkers with a new governor and everything else that's happening, that she gets the cooperation that is necessary to continue leading the greatest state in the union. I know those of you that are watching from other places might not agree, but where New York goes, everyone else follows. So we are really excited on the historic opportunity for her to lead as a woman and the opportunity to continue as the second African American male in the position of Lieutenant Governor. Brian Benjamin gets an opportunity as well, representing Harlem World, and that chance for us to truly see change in New York. We have a city council that's majority women. We have a lot of newly elected officers. So hope springs eternal, right, Senor Pajado?
Yes,
Yeah,
indeed.
y'all can run with that. Yeah, keep on running.
Brings eternal.
Hope springs
Keep on running.
eternal. But now there's some other news that we haven't touched on, and this is more where the cultural comes into a legal case. And I haven't been following the case as directly. I've been busy with a couple of things on my plate, but it is in real time the trial of R&B singer R. Kelly. And there's some new witness information. There's some other legal pieces that our legal experts wanted to weigh in on today. So over to you, gentlemen.
Well, I can tell you that the trial, I think it's third day of witnesses going on. Eastern District is out in Brooklyn, and we also know that he has a case in Chicago. The way it makes its way into federal court is the racketeering charges, and we'll spend a show really talking about that. I don't want to spend today doing that, but I do want to give a little tease to our listeners and the violation of the Mann Act, which has to do with sexual conduct with minors and transporting those for immoral sexual behaviors. Now, what I do want to say
Across state lines.
across state lines, right? And so, what I do want to say is that if he was just prosecuted on the Mann Act in and of itself, those are misdemeanors. So, in federal court, you can be tried on misdemeanors. But when you add the racketeering, then you start to kind of move the ball in another way. And so, his guidelines is anywhere from 10 years to life if convicted on all counts. We have a friend of the show who's one of the lead attorneys, Deborah Canick, who's in there fighting on his behalf, putting all morals aside, just doing the legal work. And there's a lot to be said. Some of the issues are, did he knowingly transmit a sexually transmitted disease as herpes? And there's arguments as to whether or not herpes is a sexually transmitted disease, because it is not like other sexually transmitted disease. So therefore, that count should be dismissed. Conversations and testimony in reference to Aaliyah and whether or not he was involved with creating the fake identification. One of the witnesses, based upon my research, said, one of his cohorts or business associates said that he wasn't involved in that. That wasn't something that he did. He didn't bribe an official to doctor documents to make her older than what she was. That's different than whether or not he knew. Let's just make that clear, right? Because the U.S. government and Eastern District U.S. attorneys don't put on cases that they plan on losing. So they dotting the I's and crossing every single T that they can in reference to proving their case. And it's one of the things that I've realized in doing the research on this case and keeping my eye on it is that a couple of days ago they had his doctor testify, right, who diagnosed him with herpes and how he would treat him for that, right, and which was kind of in contradiction to one of the star witnesses who said that they caught herpes in 2010, and it turns out that he was in some softly diagnosed it with 2011, although medical records show before then, and this doctor giving him medication as to that. But this doctor never charged him a fee, right? Never. This is the world that we don't live in, right? You so famous, you so in the stratosphere that other professionals are not even charging you a fee.
I don't know where they do that at.
Look, but he did accept going to the concerts. He did accept going to the after parties. I mean, I don't know if the person is a person of color. I don't recall that. But the barter system, the African barter system, since we haven't paid homage to our ancestors this whole show, the African barter system clearly still in play today as we speak.
Oh boy, interesting. I don't know how this is all. Like you said, the U.S. attorney doesn't try a case unless they think that they really have an opportunity to win it. So I'm interested to see how this is really going to play out. And can you explain to the audience, there are multiple trials happening for this one defendant. So how does one affect the other, or does it not?
Well, I mean, my experience tells me that if you're convicted in federal court, then any other case you have anywhere else, you should just kind of fold that into the conviction that you have in federal court. There are some state claims that he has in Illinois, I believe, a variety of sexual abuse cases that will probably get folded if he's found convicted in this case. That's the normal practice. You know, I've had clients that I've litigated their cases here in New York, and they had something in Florida, or they had something in Chicago, or something in Alabama, and it might be state related, or at the most it might be federal related, depending upon the census. Here in New York, you try to get that to run concurrent, get covered as. I mean, this is just the fallout of the day-to-day of a defense attorney and how sentencing goes. And once again, we will do a show fully on this so we can break it down in a way that we're not time prohibited. But one of the things that's going to make it challenging for him is that you have people testifying. Jane Doe number 5, who's testified, she's only 4'11" and weighed 98 pounds. And she's saying that she tried to leave. She testified that she tried to leave the compound and couldn't. And that there was these rules and regulations that you had to have. Testimony came out. The rules of R. Kelly was you have to trust daddy. You have to do whatever he says. No rebuttals, no disrespect, no rebellion. Remain humble, happy, innocent, and beautiful as you were when you first came to the compound. But life has also shown us what it's like to be on the road and be down with the hip hop and the greatest and the latest. People get picked out of the crowd, and they sometimes know what they're getting into. And then you got to say to yourself, Ed, what's going on with the parents? Where are they in this whole thing?
And it's interesting you mentioned that, because I read something where one of the parents actually tried to get him to invest in some sort of kooky business scheme that they had, and that the victim herself found her own parents to be quite was very disappointed at her parents, to say the least. And I guess another young woman testified that Mr. Kelly told her that her parents had basically sold her for a certain amount of drugs. I mean, you also have I guess witnesses stating that he made them, these victim witnesses stating that he made them write letters stating that they had either struck themselves or that they had told him that they were older than what they really were. So I guess to defeat any idea that he had knowledge of their actual age. And
that was one of the allegations that they used to say why he married Aaliyah, was because the intimacy that they had. So if you get married, then you can't charge with anything.
Yeah. And her being pregnant at the time, and him having his, I guess, manager go to some sort of social service office and get a fake ID, bribing that worker. So a lot of the allegations here are really lurid. The question is whether the jury is going to find these witnesses credible, because I also heard that under cross-examination, one of these victims had previously attempted to sue or had accepted a settlement of some sort.
You have contradictions left and right. There's a lot of room here for cross-examination. One of the witnesses said that you could only wear loose clothes and loose fitting clothes. That was part of his rules. But then, lo and behold, defense counsel, to their credit, got a picture where she's wearing tight clothes and she's taking a picture of herself, in a room, one of these selfies. So if there's a trial of moral character, there's a lot of blows being thrown, whether it's the parents' fault,
Yep.
How did we get here? But if it's the letter of the law, and this is what I try to tell people, there's a lot of things that can go on during the trial. But when you get those jury instructions and you have to match A to A and B to B, like a crossword or like a multiple choice, that's what really matters. The smoke is just a smoke. It's whether or not you meet those elements. And this is all about credibility, as Ed is talking about.
I think another factor to consider here is with the resources that the government has, whether they will be able to wear him down. Because it sounds like from a lot of the information that's coming out in this case is that there's a potential for even new cases outside of the Eastern District of New York and Illinois, because a lot of these offenses occurred in several states on the road, and I'm not sure if there's some backup cases that the federal government is holding, in its pouch, per if you will, waiting for this trial to end, and if it doesn't end successfully, seeing if he has the wherewithal to muster up this type of criminal defense for another trial. I mean, I've
See,
seen that sometimes in the
I
past
wonder
as a strategy by the government.
now I wonder who got the jaded hat on today. Who's wearing the jaded hat today? He
You
got it
rubbing off.
on. He got it on and popping, boy. He knows the deal. That's Ed. You 100% correct, because that's what we always. There is always a bigger line. There's always something behind door number one.
Because how many attorneys right now are working on this case, Royce?
There is approximately 5 that I'm aware of, and that's just in the Eastern District. We're not talking about what's going on in Illinois, right?
Wow.
So the proof is in the pudding. We'll see, but I think you hit the nail on the head in that. Is this just let me cast the first stone, and then you other guys can come in and throw these other rocks, and then after a while, America will just get tired and just say, you know what, off with your head, because it is very easy to be unseen and unheard from when you have criminal charges against you. As I walked by the courtroom and the courthouse, you had some fans out there. They were blasting R. Kelly music. That was today or yesterday when it was 80 something degrees, when it was 90 degrees, when the hurricane was coming through Henri. I don't know if people were out there like that. You know what I'm saying? It's the test of time. It's one of those things. And his music, we can't even go into his music. His music is, it speaks for itself, good and bad, reality or fact or fiction. The geniuses is there, and we've seen other geniuses in the music industry have legal problems, and some get away, and some did not, and some did, and some are still doing what they do. But that's just me talking.
And there's more that's coming out of this because there's some backlash around how it's being reported on. I saw something come up about his defenders are telling vulnerable Black women that they don't matter. Like, people are taking real and putting real stake in the ground on what they feel about this. So this is going to be telling how all of this starts to unwind and what the decisions are, because it's far reaching. We have victims that are being victimized again because they're going through this whole process. We have feelings around how celebrities get treated when something like this happens versus, Johnny in the neighborhood. So it's a lot to consider.
And let me just add something. Let me add something to it. Now, Aaliyah, right? Her estate. There's a book that's come out. I forgot the name of the author. White woman who's now interested has selling a book. I think it's called Baby Girl or The Baby Girl. Once again, I'm gonna borrow the jaded hat from Ed and put it on.
Okay.
Did we lose Mr. Russell?
Yeah, we lost it for a second. Both of you are on location. This is what happens from time to time, but he'll be right back. And it's interesting though when you look at the fact that now someone's writing a movie or a book about Aaliyah. It's so many pieces. I think Rolanda, you said it best, and I'll repeat it again. Once the box is open, all the bones fall out. So there's a lot that has happened, and I think what we're seeing also with this cancel culture and all of the different movements that have happened, people are frustrated with seeing, situations occur that continue to occur, and there's no justice that really happens, and folks are just tired. They're tired of victims being victimized. They're tired of you getting a pass because you have a certain position. So there's a lot more I feel to come. This is just the beginning. I definitely want to hear about this book that you were mentioning with someone writing it about Aaliyah. Mr.
Right. As a matter
Rose?
of fact, they were writing it about Aaliyah, and I'm sorry, let me get my camera together. And it's just, it's funny how it is now coming to the market during his trial, and how the parents of Aaliyah have even railed against it. And the author I saw on CNN today was saying, well, no, it was time to bring it out because we really wanted to put the chapter of R. Kelly to bed, because whenever you think about Aaliyah, you think about R. Kelly. I was saying in my head, whenever I think about Aaliyah, I think about Missy Elliott. I think about all the records that she did with a whole bunch of other producers. I barely think about R. Kelly, but once again, I'll put the jaded cap on. People are doing what they're doing because the time is right to do it. Right. You don't talk about police brutality and things of that nature. There it is, baby girl. Right. And so here it is out, and the chapter is dedicated to from my understanding, it's dedicated to her relationship with R. Kelly, and why not now, right? You know what I'm saying, right?
Interesting.
I
Interesting.
mean,
And Rich,
I think a number of people don't have any problem exploiting the dead. I mean, what we
And the
see
and the and the
is
and the wound
amazing.
and the wounded
And
right,
the
is
wounded,
right,
the vulnerable,
right, right.
the
And that
maimed,
and that
whatever
and
you
that
want to call it.
and that goes back to, like, if I already knocked you out, why am I going to stomp you? You know what I'm saying? It's the same thing. It's like that theory. And so, I think we need to keep a critical eye on all of this. And like I said, we'll do a show on this in and of itself, because we want to go through what racketeering, we want to go through what's a Mann Act, we want to go through the testimony and try to give as much of an unbiased opinion as to what's going on, and talk about the cultural ramifications.
absolutely.
Because people still listen to a lot of folks that have been convicted morally, right? Not in the eyes of justice. And if that's their guy, or that's their girl, or that's their musician, or that's their artist,
Hmm.
you're not muting anybody.
Well, there was a minute where folks were a little bit more cautious and they stopped because the cancel culture put the pressure on that, something's wrong with you if you're still playing music from someone who has done damage. But to your point, and Rich, we see you. He said, never get tired in doing good. Exactly. And that the author wrote this book, claims to be speaking on her behalf. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, you can't really speak for someone who's passed on, or can you? I
And
don't know.
who gave you the authority? Like, you ain't like her best friend. Like, if God forbid Ed trips over a hot wire, I'm gonna talk about him. But, like, I don't expect somebody else to. I don't expect somebody else who don't know him to talk about him. You're like, like, step back, step back. You know what I mean?
Oh my goodness. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the top of another show, Speaking Legally, where the legal meets the cultural, every Wednesday, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We appreciate you tuning in, definitely being a part of our conversation today. And yeah, she's been deceased 20 years, Sabrina. I tell you,
Yeah,
that's even shocking because that
yeah.
ages some people, because I'm aging backwards. So I'm getting younger. But yeah, it's 2 decades have passed since all of this. And Richard said the author is supposed to be a friend of hers. So this will be interesting, to be continued. We constantly have content because the world continues to turn on its axis every day. And we are here to bring you two legal experts that are able to share knowledge, information, enlighten you so you can be involved in what's happening with more than just hearsay, but actual facts that are grounded in legal proof and or analyzation that just helps you to understand what we're witnessing in this new world. So stay safe, be well, enjoy these last days of summer, and we'll be back again with our next show next week, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard. Bye-bye, everyone.
Okay, take care.
Be well.